minute. Welcome to I Just Need a Minute. Tonight, I'm really excited to be back. Haley and I are back from the UK and rested and a lot more centered, which is really exciting. But y'all, I miss my DFC family. So it's great to be able to hang out with you tonight. So if you're watching, please just drop a comment. Tell us, hey, I've missed you. And you'll probably see my other fur baby here in a moment, Wicket, who you all almost never see because she's very shy, and Oliver both have been very clingy since Haley and I got back over the weekend. Um, awesome. Well, tonight, I'm really excited to be kicking off Power and Pride Month here at the Faith Community. That's a tradition of ours to talk about Black Power and LGBTQ plus Pride every June, because those are two things that are really important to us here at the Faith Community, and they're big things that come in June with that. I mean, you've got the celebration of Gay Pride, of course, and then you've got Juneteenth coming up this month as well. So it's just natural for us as a community to celebrate all of that together. Hey, Isha, good to see you. And then here, of course, on cue is Oliver, bless his heart. Awesome. So tonight, I just wanted to share a little bit of some of my reflections from my time in Scotland with Haley. And all of that good stuff. And I wanted to tell you a little bit of a story of something that's kind of funny. I mean, it's funny now when I look back on it. At the moment, not so much, and I think you'll see why. But anyway, so buckle down. It's story time with Callie. Um, so Haley and I ended up visiting a lot of places when we were in Scotland, but one of the places that we spent the most time was this island called Iona. So Iona is actually a place that has a lot of significance in Celtic spirituality. For thousands of years, it's been a place that's considered a thin place, which in Celtic spirituality basically means that it is a place where the separation between the sacred realm and the natural realm where we find ourselves is so thin, it seems as if there's only just a veil separating the two. Um, and so people call it the Holy Island for that reason. So Haley and I had planned to spend several days here, which we did. And we got to, tour some nunnery ruins. We got to spend time in the Abbey that's there. And it was really interesting because the spirituality that has been practiced on Iona has been kind of unconventional the whole time, right? So the nuns that lived there, when you think of like medieval nuns and whatnot, you think of this community of women who sequester themselves away from the world so they can do their piety separate from the worldliness of everything else, right? Like completely separate from the world that we inhabit. And that's not what they were about at all. Like they were 100% sister acting it up, right? Where they were out in the community, they were engaging their neighbors, they were living out greatest commandment theology. And the monastery that was there as well operated from this very same paradigm. So it should come as no surprise to everyone that, of course, when going back into history a little bit, King Henry VIII came into power and forced himself into the role of the head of the Church of England, that he immediately decimated those communities, unfortunately. But people had still been pilgrimaging to Iona for spiritual reasons after that. And in the 1950s-ish, there was this guy, his name's George MacLeod, revigorated some of the spiritual community there at Iona. So today the Abbey is operating. They don't necessarily have monks in a traditional sense, but it's basically a place where it's an ecumenical community. So people of all denominations, all faith backgrounds, so not even necessarily Christians, come together. They learn about how to engage the divine together. They break bread together. And because the Abbey doesn't necessarily have a dedicated spiritual leadership team, the responsibility of the worship services just kind of falls on whatever people are there. And it's really beautiful. And the community itself is worldwide and is committed to all of the things that we care about here at TFC. So I had the opportunity to participate in a worship service there, and y'all like sitting in a place so ancient, um, but seeing liturgy that was about Black liberation and embracing queer people just as they are. Like I cried because you don't expect to see that in like a place associated with ancient Christianity. So we spent a lot of time on the island. But one of the story I want to tell you about has to do with a tradition about this place called St. Columba's Bay. So St. Columba is the monk who landed on the island in something like the 580s, like way long time ago, and established the first monastery there. But at the bay where he landed, pilgrims started this tradition where you hike to the bay. When you get to the bay, you pick up two rocks. One rock represents something that you need to let go of. One rock represents something that you need to take with you. And so for the rock that represents the thing you need to let go of, you hurl it into the ocean, symbolic of letting it go, you know, pulling an Elsa, right? And the other rock represents like you take it with you, and it represents this thing that you need to take with you in terms of maybe a commitment to love yourself more intentionally, or a commitment to be more gracious with yourself, or be more compassionate to your neighbor, you know, whatever it is for you. And so Haley had participated in this ritual a decade ago when she was an undergrad, and was really excited for me to go through it. So things happened. Haley wasn't able to go on the hike. So we were like, okay, you know, there's a path. I'll go on it by myself. And here is where things begin to go awry, my friends. So I'm hiking along. It starts out at this huge, huge pasture. Like there are sheep everywhere. The path is very clearly marked. And I'm just having myself a grand old time. You know, like I feel like I am Bilbo Baggins or Frodo Baggins, making my way out of the Shire, going up and down all these beautiful hills, surrounded by the sheep. Grand old time. Okay. The hike starts to get a bit more challenging, right? So a much steeper vertical incline. And I haven't done any intense hiking since I was a camp counselor several years ago. And I'm a little bit out of shape, right? So I'm doing the hiking thing, all that good stuff. And so I've been hiking for 30, 45 minutes at this point. I knew it was going to be quite a way to the bay. And then all of a sudden, the trail ends. And there are no signs indicating which direction I need to go. Right. So I consider my options. It's like, well, I know if I get lost, the island is really small. And if worst case scenario, I could follow the coastline back to the other bay, Martyrs Bay, where the ferry comes to drop people off and take them back to the island of Mull right across the bay. It's like, so that's okay, whatever. It's a small island. So I assess the ground in front of me. I think I see a footpath and I take it, and I can already hear you all shaking your head saying, oh, Callie, oh no. Because, and those concerns would be well founded because I indeed got lost. So I'm hiking along Iona by myself. I don't see another pilgrim. Like from the time I left the sheep field, right? I hadn't seen anybody else in ages. And I was like, oh no, this isn't good. But I kept going because I really wanted to participate in this ritual. And I was like, I can't be that far from the bay. I know that the coast is close by. So I kept going, kept going. And so finally, I end up in this ravine. And like there's a little inlet where the ocean's coming in a little bit. There's a small cave close by. I know that it's not the bay that I was supposed to have ended up at, but I was exhausted. My muscles were screaming at me, like, Callie, why would you put us under this duress? And I sat down for a minute and I cried. Full disclosure, because I was like, how am I going to get back? Because I am so tired, right? And so I took another moment to reassess my options and decided, you know, very much like the Ethiopian eunuch in the book of Acts, like, is this not water? Why can't I do the ritual now? Thank you, Shari. Yes, like, and the tears helped, I will say, like, helped me a calm head. So, but it's like, is this not water? Why not do the ritual? So I'm sitting there, wipe the tears off my face, and I take a rock, chuck it, and I keep another rock. And we had also um, wanted to do this ritual on behalf of some of our chosen family as well. So I did the same thing. I thought about the people in my life who are my family, and I didn't dare have the audacity to like ask God for a specific thing for them to lay down. I just asked God, like, whatever they need to let go of, let them let go of it. Whatever they need to hold on to, let them hold on to it, and I'll give them the rocks later. Um, and so it has a happy ending, Tony, because see, I did come back in one piece, right? So we see that it ended okay. But it gets better, I promise. So I did the ritual, sat there for a moment, kind of like assessed my surroundings, because when I was a camp counselor, I did a lot of like hiking and stuff in kind of like middle of nowhere places. So I had some basic skills to help me get out of the scenario, right? So I started going vaguely in the direction that I needed to go. Okay. And at this point, I feel like there are probably a couple of things going through your heads. One might be Tony's is like, I'm feeling really anxious hearing this. Um, Yikes, but I am okay. And the second thing might be, Callie, what in the world does this have to do with power and pride? I got a cough for a second. Um, but what does this have to do with power and pride? And as I was hiking, believe it or not, I began to start reflecting on how is this journey that I was taking similar to our spiritual journeys, particularly on the path of deconstruction, right? Sometimes when we start that journey of deconstruction, the path is clearly marked. We know that there are people that we can talk to, resources that we can engage in, and we know that those sources are reliable. But sometimes you get to a dead end where the path just stops and there is no clearly defined path for you to walk. Kind of like TFC last month with Let's Talk About Sex Month. There's not a like guidebook for that, y'all. We're making it. We are blazing the trail. We are flattening the grass so that other people can follow us, right? So I started thinking about all the other ways that this journey I was on was like my journey of deconstruction. So that first thing that came up was sometimes there's not a clearly marked path, but you just got to keep moving forward. Another thing that resonated with me on that journey was sometimes the path given to you can be deceptive. There'd be times where I would be looking at the ground and be like, okay, this seems like a good place to go. And the next thing I know, my foot, like I'd be stepping on what I thought was solid ground and I thought was grass. And the next thing I know, I'm ankle deep in a puddle. And I'm glad it was only ankle deep, right? Because some of the land around there was pretty boggy. So I had to be really careful about where I put my footing. And so sometimes when we're on this deconstruction journey, we see something that looks really good on the surface, but then once we peel back that surface layer, we realize it's the same misogyny, the same racism, the same homophobia, just dressed up a little bit prettier to make people think that it's a little bit better than whatever nonsense we had come from. Right, so sometimes we got to blaze the trail ourselves. Sometimes we have to be extra careful about the ground that's in front of us because it's a little deceptive. And sometimes, though, the path, not all paths are made for you, but they can get you back to where you need to be. Right. So ultimately, the way that I ended up back and unlost myself was eventually, you remember the sheep I told you about? I found some of their paths. They were little, narrow, tiny things, but they were going vaguely the direction I knew I needed to be going in. And I knew I was going the right way because I also saw their hoof marks. So that path wasn't designed for me. It wasn't made for a human. Obviously, it was made for sheep, and the sheep had made the path. But by following that path, I was able to get back to where I needed to go. So sometimes there are paths out there that aren't made for you, or there are resources out there that aren't made with you in mind, but they can get you on the path to being a better ally, to loving yourself better, to loving your neighbor better. For me as a white person, like I know that the books that I read about what the experiences of Black folks are in the United States, they aren't written with me as the audience. But by reading those, I learn how to love my Black neighbors better. And so for the straight folks who are part of TFC, a lot of the queer stuff out there isn't made to be for you. Like you are not the target audience for that. But by reading that, you learn more about your queer brothers and sisters and non-binary siblings, and you learn how to love them better. And you learn how to be a better sibling, a better ally. So while those paths weren't made necessarily for you, they can get you back to where you need to be. So it turned out okay. I followed the sheep path, right? And I crested the hill, and when I saw the big pasture where I knew the opening of, or the trailhead was, I wept tears of joy, and I bent down and I picked up another rock. Um, Even though I'd already done the ritual, because I took this rock as a reminder, and this is my reminder for you. Deconstruction is hard, but you are capable of doing hard things. So I've got that rock to remind me that I am still capable of doing hard things and doing them well. So that is the message for you all tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget, we've got Bible and Beyond on Saturday. So please, please, please make sure to check that out. If this has blessed you, you feel like somebody else in your life needs to hear it tonight, please share it with them and tell them, it's TFC for me. Much love to all of you, and I will see you on Saturday.